Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to the virtual Meet the Grad Alumni and Industry panel. My name is Rocco Carbone, and I am the Civil Engineering Program Coordinator at Mohawk College. It is my pleasure to be your host and moderator for today's Civil Engineering panel. Thank you to the Mohawk students and recent graduates joining us virtually today. We hope you enjoy hearing about the career journeys of our panelists and their thoughts on how job seekers can emerge in the current market today. But before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce our alumni panelists. Dan McKinnon is a graduate from the Civil Engineering Technician program at Mohawk College and the General Manager of the City of Hamilton Public Works Department. And Kevin Robinson is a graduate from Civil Engineering Technology. He joins us from Walters Group, where he works as a construction coordinator. So a big thank you to our panelists for taking the time to share your experience with the students. I look forward to hearing more about your career paths and lessons learned along the way. So the format today will be an open format towards the end where the students and the guests can ask our panelists questions. We'll have some discussion items that I'll ask and lead the discussion with. But before we do so, I'd like to request our panelists perhaps provide a little bit of a bio on themselves and their careers before we begin. So perhaps we'll start first with Dan and then we'll follow with Kevin if we may.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Dan McKinnon, the General Manager of Public Works for the City of Hamilton. Public Works is a very large organization, and pretty much if you see somebody wearing orange around the city with a city logo on, it's probably one of my team members. Responsible for the Hamilton Street Railway, Hamilton Water, parks, cemeteries, forestry, horticulture, engineering, transportation and operations, and the environmental group, which looks after waste management. So I graduated from Mohawk in 1986, spent the first 15 years of my career in kind of the heavy civil construction area, road, sewer, water main, that kind of thing. Joined the city as a construction inspector, and for the last 20 or so years have held progressively more responsible positions in management and senior management. And happy to be here today to answer any questions that I might be able to help you folks get a sense of what opportunities there are with the city and otherwise. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Now, Kevin, perhaps a couple minutes.
Sure. So my name is Kevin Robinson. I'm actually graduated from Mohawk from Civil Engineering Technology last summer. Seems like years ago, but it's only been a little while. I'm a construction coordinator with Walters Group, just down in Hamilton, and I primarily run into pre-planning of larger construction projects, especially to do with steel fabrication erection. Currently, I'm actually the lead coordinator for the Maple Leaf plant out in London. It's kind of like a 600,000 square foot food processing plant. I actually was hired right out of my co-op. So basically right after my first co-op, I was given a job offer and kind of worked out really well for me. And that's kind of where I ended up where I am. But actually getting to the civil engineering field, I kind of went a little different path than most people. I actually started in biotechnology and genetic engineering with the University of Waterloo. Kind of really didn't like it at all. And after a couple of years working in private and public sectors, I kind of decided it was time for a change. And I fell into the civil engineering technology program at Mohawk and decided to go with it. And honestly, it really opened up my eyes to exactly how much you can do with civil engineering, especially at technology level. Like you really can do whatever. And I actually worked quite heavily with the teachers on various projects, and actually they recommended me to Walters and got a job there, loved it, and basically got hired right after my first co-op. And it's been going really well ever since. Actually been moving on to my own projects now, bigger and better projects, and we're currently looking at a couple world-class projects, one being the One Tower in downtown Toronto, which I believe will be the tallest mixed-use building in all of Canada. As of right now, we're also bidding a second one that's aiming to go taller, but that's how it stands at the moment. And happy to be here and happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to maybe just bring up a couple discussion items where Dan and Kevin, if you may, just kind of feel free to provide your experience. I think it'd be advantageous for a lot of the attendees to maybe learn how, how some of the stuff transpired and affected you in your career and some of the choices. So, for example, what value has your Mohawk education provided? You always hear in class a lot of times that teachers are teaching content and mumblings around students. Will we ever use this? Will we ever see this in the real, in the real world? What would you be able to say to address that point?
I mean, I don't know how many people here right now are taking their structures courses, but like honest to God, every single day for about 2.5 hours, I'm designing beams, designing crane loads on ground bearing pressures, doing, geotech, doing structures, designing beams, designing lifting points. So basically it's exactly what you learn in class. You turn around and use it on your first day of co-op. It's pretty much what I did. And I continue to use it just about every single day. As far as estimating goes as well, like there's a lot of times I use the same principles. You turn around and use it right in the field, and overall you're given all those resources and they become really handy. It's real world application that you learn, and they might say it, but it's true. It's pretty much word for word. Some of the problems can almost be the exact same problems that I work on in the structure class, to be honest, like those beam loads, and a lot of the applied mechanics are directly relatable for rigging points and construction purposes, especially working in steel. A lot of your content's also steel, so it's directly right out of the course. And doing those courses really give you the resources to be able to actually go to the workplace and do it right away. No real training needed.
So Rocco, maybe I'll follow up, Kevin, and so certainly appreciate what I will characterize as kind of those hardcore engineering principles that Kev was alluding to. And I think my career path took a wee bit of a different turn. I ended up managing water and sewer projects in the road. So it was more about constructability and finding ways to get around the challenges of groundwater, trenching, confined space, that kind of thing. So, but I guess as a bit of an opposite to the technical competency that you learn at Mohawk, I reflect on one of the courses that I took was report writing. And at the time, I really didn't have a lot of interest in it. But I can tell you for the career path that I've taken, communication and being able to articulate your thoughts, whether verbally or through reports, ended up being very important for me. And I think was, the effort that I put into that in my career ultimately, served me well to follow the career path that I've taken. I am in senior management now at the City of Hamilton, and that ability to convey a message and to deal with different audiences, whether it's residents out on the street, whether it's city council, or whether it's other engineering practitioners, I would encourage people to think about your ability to communicate. It's very important.
Okay, wait a second here. Report writing in civil engineering, like we have to write papers and reports. Like what's the can we just do the math stuff and figure out the courses? Like do we really need to take report writing lessons and skills? Are those required? Because I hate like having to write papers.
So I reflect on one of my the mentors that I had early on in my career. He said, when you first come out of school, you get paid for what you do. Then when you get a little further down your career path, you get paid for what you know. And then if you really kind of amp up your career, you get paid for what you get out of other people. And so along the way, if that's what people want to do, I mean, I know fellows and ladies who just love the hardcore engineering and sitting at a desk and just, doing the calculations and some of the references that Kev made there, calculating the bending moments and live loads and all that kind of stuff. But we do have a really strong need to have very technically strong people in those senior management roles as well. So either communicating with the city council or communicating with other people in the community who don't have technical backgrounds. So that report writing skill, depending on the path you want your career to take, it becomes very important. And so whether you're working in the private sector like Kev, or if you're working in the public sector like me, I can imagine if you're working in the private sector and things are going really well, you might have to start convincing bankers or finance people to get behind you on a particular job, or you might be dealing with customers who really don't have a technical background. And so yeah, it may not seem obvious in the early days of school or a person's career, but I think the report writing and the communications is very important.
See, that's great. They don't just have to hear it from me. You do have 2 general education courses in your 5th semester, and don't be sending me emails later on for students that are in the civil program to try to get out of them. They're to create a well-balanced, rounded student who can write reports and be able to comprehend and discuss items outside of a technical field. So there's lots of value in this. So thank you for that, Dan. And that's really going to roll in nicely into my next question. I deal with a lot of employers, and one of the largest requests I get from employers is to be able to help teach soft skills. In your profession, how have soft skills helped you succeed, and how you pursue additional education and training throughout your careers?
Well, maybe I'll jump in there if that's okay. So, going back to my comment about getting paid for what you do and then for what you know, I loved when I first came out of school. My primary goal was just to be outside. Just loved being outdoors and all the excitement and the stimulation of being on a construction site with lots of equipment and that kind of thing. But as I started to think more about kind of the career path that I wanted to follow, I knew that, if you're going to chase the money too, often you end up having to be in charge of a bunch of people. So not only is communication important there, but also leadership skills. And I think one of the things that has served me probably the best and allowed me to have the success that I've had at the city was my curiosity, my personal interest around leadership. And what is it about those folks who, the graduates will know, and even if they've had part-time jobs up until now, sometimes you work for somebody that you would go through a brick wall for, and sometimes you work for somebody that you don't want to see the next day. So what is it about those leaders that make you want to follow them? And I guess for myself, I always had kind of set this idea that I wanted to be that leader that I always wanted to follow. And so that's an entire body of knowledge on its own. There's an incredible amount of research, and there's lots of those leadership skills that can be learned, as opposed to just having the good luck of being born with some charisma and an ability to communicate. You can learn those things that would make you a great leader. And so, again, it goes back to kind of the career path that you think you might want for yourself. But I think those leadership skills, and I'm guessing Kevin can probably relate to this. Kevin doesn't go out and erect all the steel by himself. He's got a team that he has to lead. And so being able to communicate and get them to follow him is important. So I'm not sure how much thought or kind of effort Kevin's put into it, but I suspect it's his leadership skills that are probably serving him well and being successful where he is now. So maybe with that, I'll hand that off to Kev.
That's a great point. I actually think maybe I can go from the other end on this. So I'm graduated last year. I'm pretty new at what I do. In fact, I'm one of the newest construction coordinators that's probably ever been at Walters. And so I have to lean extremely heavily on my senior team to basically tell me, does this make sense and does this work? And like you touched on, communication is the number one thing. Like, these projects can involve anywhere from, like, I got a project that there's 12 people working on, and my other project has a close to, I think, 1,200 people working on it right now. And in every step of the way, you're working with anywhere from one trade to 100 different trades, and you're trying to coordinate, how is your team going to go in and work, put this piece of steel up while there's 15 other trades trying to put up the same kind of things in the same areas. And so it comes down to being able to, present, communicate, and ultimately take that information and come back to your team and talk about what makes sense for your guys, and how does that make sense for the client. And that all comes back to communication and yeah, a little bit of charisma and a little bit of confidence in your ability to, make sure you make the right decisions. Another thing is also work ethic. I personally think, not necessarily, you got to work yourself to the bone when you get to a job, but just being willing to work and learn. When you come from a co-op, no one's expecting you to be the number one person there or know absolutely everything. They just expect you to pay attention and learn and really try. And when I got to Walters, you kind of think you might know quite a bit, and then all of a sudden you start listening to people and you start realizing really quickly that you really don't. And so you got to really sit down and just just listen to people and really take in the resources you have. Like I got surrounded and got lucky and got surrounded by a wonderful team, and they're willing to show me all this great stuff. And, and I had to put a little extra time in afterwards and learn a little extra about different cranes and different rigging items, and just so I could be a little more presentable at the table and kind of understand more what was going on. And I had a lot of private conversations with my management team about, what can I do to be better as a person and as an employee. And if you take those extra initiatives and put a little more extra work in at the earliest stages, it really stands out. And it's important to remember that you're a co-op student. They don't necessarily expect you to be the most knowledgeable person there. They just expect you to be willing, to learn and to take the steps needed to learn those different things.
Yeah, Rocco, if I can pile on to what Kevin just said there, I know from my some of my earlier experiences when I left the private sector and I went to the city, I was a bit cocky. I had a decade of private sector experience. I thought I had all the answers, and I learned very quickly when I joined the city that there was a lot of really smart people there, and I learned quickly to just keep my mouth shut until I learned. And so to just add to what Kevin said there, every workplace that you go to, you'll probably feel a connection with somebody there. I would encourage people to think about that and maybe reach out to those folks to be your mentor. And if there's one thing that I would encourage new graduates or people on work term, just be curious. I loved it when students asked me questions because it showed me that they had a genuine interest in the work. And if you don't understand what you're doing, ask. Because the worst thing and I suspect Kev will appreciate this as well, the worst thing you can do for me as a supervisor is to leave the job site thinking that the person I've left there knows what they're doing when they really had a question, but they were afraid to ask it, because it's going to come back to haunt both of us. So just be curious, ask lots of questions, and kind of look for that person who you think maybe you can make a connection with, that either has a style that you like or you just feel is approachable, because we all need those people in our careers, people that we can reach out to and ask for advice and ask questions. So
yeah, definitely ask questions.
On that note, well, what do you see as some of the coming trends in your sector that new graduates should know about?
Well, I can start. I always preach leadership skills, because whether or not you're going to lead large groups of people or small groups of people, those skills are transferable and they're very powerful. I guess two other things that, when I reflect on the things that I'm doing at the City of Hamilton right now, I'm really focused on quality management. And so for anybody who has an interest in that, just need lots of information on the internet. And sorry, Rock, I think I'm getting a lot of feedback from your, I'm not sure if you can mute yourself. I think it's because the headphones. So quality management's a good one. And then the other one is one of the key elements in any quality management system is continuous improvement. There is a whole body of knowledge and field of study about how you can improve whatever job that you happen to be doing. And so those are two things that, I learned a long time ago in my career are incredibly valuable for organizations. And so, if I see somebody, a recent grad or somebody coming to to an interview who either has a civil background or mechanical, and in public works, we've got civil, mechanical, transportation, biological, environmental, like chemistry, we've got all kinds of disciplines there. But if I see somebody who's on their own sought out to learn about continuous improvement, and what I mean by that is like Lean Six Sigma style techniques for improving process and getting rid of waste, or just quality management systems, whether they're environmental management systems or like the ISO 9000 style management systems for quality and manufacturing. I think there's a lot of really excellent skills that people can pick up kind of off to the side that can complement whatever their main skill set is, again, whether it's civil or otherwise.
And I think just to add to that, there's something to be said for today's world. Like, it just seems that communications kind of get lost, and people are turning more and more to procedures and stuff. And it's nice to see, like, you got to have a little bit of common sense in some things as well. Like, so many times I get things on my desk and it just got to shake your head because it just doesn't make any sense at all. And you got to basically just got to pick it up and walk back over and ask them, like, what does this even represent? Like, these numbers don't make any sense. So like things like common sense will just save so much time. And then also communication. Like so many people today just seem to be scared to talk on the phone. Like picking up the phone, making a phone call for a cost estimate is something that's going to have to be done. Like don't be scared of it. And I don't really know why it's such a big problem, but it is. And then also like technology changes literally every single day. Like today Zoom, like I'm not very good with Zoom. I use Microsoft Teams almost exclusively. And so I have to ask essentially how to change my background for Zoom. Like technology moves so fast and everything changes so fast. It's so important just to, keep an open mind to learning, because it's not going to stop ever in this field. And you really got to go forward and get it yourself sometimes. And, a lot of times the people you work for are willing to give you the resource to go out and get it. Like I requested to actually go out and learn project management, and my employer said, you know what, for sure, I'll give you all the resources you need to go do it. And they love that. And now I get to go learn something else as well. It's the field is going to keep changing. You just can't be stagnant in it, or you're going to wash out.
Great. I guess that'll lead me into one of my final questions then before we turn it over to perhaps some of the students and attendees for their questions. But if there was one piece of advice or knowledge that you wish you had known, and Kevin, maybe not so long ago, and Dan, maybe a little while longer, when you graduated from Mohawk, like what may have that have been?
Get your tech report done during your first co-op, because it will save you so much time. But other than that, no, it's don't be scared. Like it's, civil engineering, you don't have to pick the right co-op right off the start. It's so transferable. There's so many different sectors. There's so many things that you may or may not want to try. Don't be scared that you picked the wrong co-op. If anything, you may have found something you loved and you didn't know about it, or you may find something you don't want to do next. It's a co-op position, and I don't know, I was so like bent on trying to pick the right one, I kind of lost sight of it actually being a learning experience and kind of stressed out over it a little bit. So that's number one thing I would say is, use the resources at your co-op, and don't be scared if you think it's the wrong one after you work there. Like at the very least, you learn something you don't want to do, or maybe you fall in love with something you don't know.
So maybe just add to that, and at the risk of sounding like a one-trick pony here, being curious and asking questions, it can take courage sometimes. And so, Kev says, don't be afraid. He's absolutely right. If you don't understand something, ask. If you're interested in something, ask. If you want to impress your boss, ask. Because at the end of the day, they're going to want to see that you have a genuine interest in the work that you're doing on their behalf. And they're going to want you to be successful, because if you're successful, they're successful. So I know that's less about kind of choosing a career path, and just, I think that advice is just will serve you well in whatever path you decide to pursue.
What great advice. I mean, and as a professor at the college in my courses, I have received some feedback from students telling me that I'm pretty excited about some of the courses that I teach, because it's the field that I worked in as a structural engineer. That's what I was passionate about. But watch me teach a municipal course, nothing, offended to that, or to an estimating course or geotechnical course for that matter. And you probably wouldn't see some of that excitement come out in my lectures, right? Which is why I try to stick to the structural design stuff. So if you love what you do, then maybe you don't work a day in your life. The great thing about civil engineering and all the different fields, whether you're in technician or technology, is you have the opportunity to really fall into a particular field that hopefully you have an interest in, and that you can learn and grow, knowing that there's always opportunity to move within the different disciplines. Great advice.
As we near 5:30, I think we'll start to wrap up. So I want to take a moment and I extend a big thank you to Dan and Kevin for spending their evening with us, sharing their career experiences. It's always so wonderful to have Mohawk graduates come back and visit campus virtually. So we really appreciate your time and sharing all about your your lessons learned along the way in your journey. So thank you. And a big thank you again to Rocco as well, who has been our moderator for the panel today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the event.